It's episode 9. This week we review Dagger of the Mind. This one of the more interesting episodes of season 1. The Enterprise is orbiting a penal rehabilitation colony for inmates and insane asylum inmates. They beam down some supplies, beam up a trunk. Turns out one of the inmates had stowed away in the trunk and beamed up to the Enterprise. But they didn't check the trunk, so he just jumped out and started beating people up, knocking them out. They figure it out, go to a Code 3 security alert. Security guard's just getting jacked like nobody's business. He just walks up, grabs her phaser, knocks him out. It was horrible. But then they eventually subdue the guy because he comes up on the bridge and he turns his back to Spock. So Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock double team the guy with a jumping bicycle kick and a nerve pinch to subdue him. Turns out the guy couldn't say his name without going into some sort of fit. They couldn't figure that out. Turned out he was actually one of the doctors, and he'd had some sort of incident that led to him becoming an inmate. McCoy didn't believe it, so they had to have an investigation. Kirk and a doctor we never saw before or since, named Helen Noel, go down to the penal colony, and the doctor down there that's supposed to be this brilliant guy that changed prison systems forever, done more in 20 years than Earth had done in 40 centuries, they kept saying. He'd actually invented some psychological torture device, wipe people's minds. He'd put in commands into their head and made them do his bidding. No explanation given as to why he did this. None at all. Not through the whole episode do they explain why he'd done this. But they made things awkward between Kirk and this doctor. She planted the seed first, and then the supposed, brains behind the operation, the guy that just wiped people's minds for reasons, he made Kirk obsessed with this doctor. He's pretty much obsessed up until the point that they just dropped the whole subject. It was a little strange. Spock beamed down to the planet after this doctor saved the day by crawling through the air conditioning ducts and turning off the security force field. It was a little bit harrowing because Kirk said, "Do you have any training on these things?" She said no. He said, "Well, it's simple. If you touch the wrong thing, you'll die. Good luck." And he shoved her through the air conditioning ducts. She pulled a giant lever. Giant lever is what she pulled. No danger to her. But then, when the security guards at the Tantalus penal colony tried to stop her, she kicked one. He flew into a gate, blew up, didn't touch any of the circuitry or anything, just threw into like a flimsy chicken wire gate, blew him up. Spock came down, everything was fine. That was pretty much it. Some interesting notes. No Scotty this episode. In fact, when Kirk and Spock left the bridge to go to the transporter room, when Kirk was going to meet this doctor to go down to the penal colony, he didn't put anyone in command. Usually he'll say, so-and-so has the con, or take command of the bridge. Not this time. There's no Mr. Scott. There was no Mr. Sulu at all. I believe George Takei also was still filming a movie with John Wayne at the time. No real clue where Jimmy Doohan was. I don't think he was a series regular quite yet, but I don't know if he was filming another project or just wasn't in the episode. Lieutenant Uhura had a fair amount in this episode early on. Most of the other regulars were in there. McCoy had a decent amount of time. It's just a little bit strange that Kirk had met this doctor that went down to the planet with him at the Christmas party. The ship Christmas party. In space. They don't have dates, they have star dates, but apparently they still have Christmas. In Charlie X, we discovered they have Thanksgiving. So apparently they still celebrate Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And the captain dances with doctors that make him uncomfortable when they go on away missions together. You hadn't thought that part through yet. There was probably regulations, and Kirk didn't pay attention to the regulations. He said, well, who's going to tell me I'm Captain Kirk? That's been getting him in trouble in these early episodes in Season 1. But outside of that was pretty much Dagger of the Mind. Next week, the Corbomite Maneuver. Corbomite Maneuver. One of the more well-known episodes of Season 1. Well, pretty much Episode 9